So you remember that giveaway we did a while back to celebrate 350 episodes? Well, in case you were wondering why I had not announced a winner yet, I promise I haven't forgotten. We have just been working so hard behind the scenes to make sure that the actual prize we're giving away is as good as it can be for you. And it's finally ready. So as promised, drumroll please. Congratulations, Chris Perkins. You are our winner. Go ahead and shoot an email over to podcast@podlaunchhq.com so we can get you set up with early access to the brand new Podcast SEO Mastery course that we are officially launching in October, but that all of our podcast listeners can actually get early access to. So stay tuned for more on that in this episode. And huge thanks to everyone who celebrated with us by leaving us a review or by texting the show to a friend. It is truly because of you that I do the work that I do here on the show every week. So thank you for listening. And without further ado, here's today's episode. In one single month, our downloads on this show jumped 41%. And it wasn't from running podcast ads. It wasn't from going on a podcast guesting sprint. It was all thanks to Podcast SEO. And today I've got Irene Picco in the studio with me from Ausha, the platform that is leading the way in tracking SEO performance for podcasters. And we're going to break down exactly how we did it. She and I first shared this data live from stage at Podcast Movement this year. And now we're going to give you the inside look at the SEO experiment that helped this show climb over 99 positions in the charts on Apple and Spotify, rank in the top 5 for more than 10 keywords, and grow by over 155% over the course of 5 months. So if you are ready to see the kind of growth that Podcast SEO can unlock for your show and finally get your show discovered while others continue to stay invisible, then grab a pen and get ready to take some notes. Welcome to Insider Secrets to a Top 100 podcast. I'm your host, Courtney Elmer. Let's make your business binge-worthy. Irene, welcome to the show. It is so great to have you here.
Thank you, Courtney. So happy to be here.
Before we dive into all things podcast SEO, I would love it if you could just give us a little insight into what Ausha is, how you help podcasters, and how you help podcasters in particular when it comes to visibility.
Sure. Ausha actually comes from audio sharing. So it's a contraction of like both beginnings of the word. And I think this pretty much sums up what we do and what's our mission here at Ausha. We are a podcast platform that's designed to go beyond podcast launch, just to help the creators and the publishers that we work with grow their audience with really powerful marketing tools that are actually designed and tailored for podcasting. And so this could be podcast SEO, this could be AI for episode publishing, this could be charts tracking. So we do all of that. And we're currently working with over 20,000 podcasts worldwide. We have received fantastic feedback. And one of our community's favorite features actually are the tools that we have that are dedicated to boosting visibility on podcast apps, just like Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And that's an area where we are true experts, I would say, and more specifically podcast SEO. But that's what we do in a nutshell.
And I can say you do it better than anyone because, for hosting platforms, most hosting platforms stop there and they say, great, we distribute your podcast and we host it, which is great. We all need that. But what you guys have done differently that I was so attracted to when I first met you and the team and just really coming to understand how you help podcasters is the marketing side. Because not everyone is doing that. And particularly with PSO, Podcast SEO, that is really something no one else is doing. And I've been teaching Podcast SEO for years. But Ausha was the first company who actually figured out how to track results of PSO in a way that is so intuitive and it's so user-friendly and it puts all the data you need at your fingertips. And I've not seen another podcast SEO platform that remotely comes close to what you've done for podcasters. So well done.
Thank you so much. Yes, we're really happy and proud to have developed that platform. Really, it's truly unique. Something that I should have mentioned is that the tools like PSO, AI for episode publishing are also kind of like detached from the hosting part from Ausha. And it has been like so successful that we made this available without necessarily hosting with us. So that's also, I think, a good way to like share the technology with everyone that might need it.
Yes, I was going to bring that up too, because that's a big question that I get all the time as well. Can I use the PSO tool without hosting? Because I'm already hosting somewhere else. And I think it was brilliant that you opened that up and allowed podcasters to be able to access these other marketing tools outside of the hosting side. Of course, you could have it all in one if you're about to launch a podcast, like hosting and all the marketing tools, one login, very easy, very simple. But if you're someone like me who's been hosting elsewhere for years, having access to these marketing tools just opens up a world of possibility when it comes to actually marketing a podcast. And that's what I want to dig in with you, Irene, because you and I were recently on stage together at Podcast Movement, and we unpacked from stage how powerful podcast SEO can be. And we used my show as a case study. But you know how marketing is. Sometimes things can sound a little too good to be true. And so people get excited about PSO, but deep down, they're also asking these questions of, well, can this really work for my show? And what results can I expect? How long will it take to see results? Which are all very valid questions and very important questions to be asking. So I thought it would be helpful if we could break down the results that we saw in my podcast using Ausha's platform to give you listening a sense of what podcast SEO can do for your show. Before we dig into all the data and all the numbers, can you break down a little bit about how podcast visibility works inside of the apps like Apple and Spotify, and how listeners are using this to find new shows to listen to?
Absolutely. I think the best way to discuss podcast discoverability is actually giving a figure and a very, very important number that has been highlighted in research. We know that today 1 in 2 podcast listeners discover new shows and new podcasts to listen to directly inside podcast apps like Apple and Spotify. So that means if you are not visible there, then you're probably missing out on like half of your audience. And if we take a closer look at a podcast app, let's take the example of Apple Podcasts. When you open up the app, you have 4 different tabs that you can see and on which you can be discoverable. You have like the homepage, you have the browse tab, you have the part where you can see all the podcasts that you're subscribing to, and you have the search tab. And research shows that actually 70% of listeners head straight to the search tab whenever they look for a new podcast to listen to, to consume. So that means you have to have like a dedicated podcast search strategy, and you have to be visible in the search results on those apps because that's where the audience is going to be.
Yes. Wow. And 70%, that's even higher because when in the past, it's always like over 50% of listeners. And now it's like even more listeners are utilizing search. Whereas previously listeners would find new shows to listen to through browsing the top 100 charts, maybe through word of mouth. But now podcast listeners who listen to podcasts are looking for topics that they want to listen to are going to go into that app. They're going to go into search and they're actually going to search for that topic, which to me is just incredible to this shift that we've seen in the way that people are looking for podcasts. So to your point, if you don't have a visibility strategy, it's going to be harder for you to get discovered. And that's not what we want for you. We want you to be at the top of those search results. And so I'd love to also have you point out, Irene, so in digging into the numbers of utilizing PSO for our podcast and applying our PSO strategy using Ausha's platform to be able to see what those results were and actually tracking how visible our podcast was in search, both before we ran this experiment and after we ran this experiment, which over the course of about 5 months or so was the length of time that we were really actively testing this. And the results blew me away. I mean, I always knew podcast SEO was powerful, but to actually see the data in real time was like, wow. So before we dig into what those numbers were, I'd love to have you point out just some of the results that you might have found particularly eye-opening in these numbers and in the chart positions that we saw for this show during this experiment.
Sure. And I want to highlight as well, because of course, like at Ausha, we provide the tool and the technology, but the work that you, Courtney, and your teams achieved on podcast SEO was really, really impressive. All of the strategy that you implemented just like helped you skyrocket through the results that I'm going to share and that we're going to talk about. So yes, I just wanted to take some time to say just congrats and how even us were blown away by what you did, because obviously we know how podcast SEO and PSO can be powerful, but you really like reached the top. So congrats again for all of that. Just to give a few figures that top of mind to me were actually pretty impressive was first of all, the number of keywords that in the span of 5 months, you managed to land in the top 5 results in the search of Apple and Spotify. After rolling out like all of the PSO strategy, you ended up having 12 different keywords that were ranking in the top 5 on Apple and Spotify and 14 in the top 10. So that means for 12 different keywords that are related to your show, if I type them in the search bar on Apple or on Spotify, your show or some of your episodes were ranking in the top 5 results. And that's incredible and absolutely huge. What gets really interesting is that some of your top episodes climbed up to 99 positions in the search results. So that means they were pretty invisible before that. And like your show couldn't be seen on the results for those specific keywords. And then just like in a few months, you managed to rank at the very top of the search. So that's also, I think, a pretty impressive result that we saw. Maybe we can also mention, I think, growth and in terms of downloads, because it's one thing to talk about like keywords ranking and show ranking and episode ranking, but in terms of growth, you also, I think, saw an increase of 41% downloads in just 1 month of using the PSO. And I think, as you mentioned, you weren't using any other like marketing levers at that time.
Correct. Yes. I might have had 1 or 2 one-off guest interviews in there, but no other dedicated strategies during this window because I really like to be able to see how a given strategy is working. And when you all asked me, can you go in and dig in your numbers and kind of see what that translated to, the 12 top keywords and the 99 positions, like this is amazing movement on the search charts, but did that actually translate in terms of growth? And I was like, yeah, that's a great question. Let me go dig and look. And it blew me away because we tracked this month to month, but we actually connected the dots to see that this was PSO that was directly responsible for the growth we saw in this window. It was incredible.
It is incredible. And honestly, I think PSO is one of the most impactful levers for podcast discoverability. Like, it's crazy the effects that it can have on download just like by implementing something that's organic. And I think also in the industry, we don't have that many organic levers and we're all about ads and sponsoring, which is great. But just going back to the basics of an organic strategy can be also really, really efficient and have amazing results.
And that's the thing too, that I'm always sharing with our clients and with listeners that listen to this podcast is organic really is the foundation, because organic, when it comes to marketing a podcast, organic gives you sticky growth. It's slower growth, but typically when we see the conversions happen through organic methods, those listeners tend to stay. They hit follow, they stick around, they come back for more because we're able to get a bit more targeted. And I like to think of podcast SEO as if you're giving us a talk from stage to an audience full of your exact listener, because it allows you to essentially tell Apple and Spotify, hey, these are the listeners that I want you to match with my show. This is the type of listener that I'm looking to reach. And so it's like giving Apple and Spotify a roadmap to say, bring these listeners to my show, which we really can't get with paid ads. You can target a lot of people with paid ads, but not all of those are going to be the right listeners. You can target a lot of people with podcast guesting, which is going to be a bit more targeted. It's an organic strategy, but 100% of the people listening to whatever podcast you're guesting on are still not going to be your exact right listener. So only some of them are going to convert. What's so fascinating about PSO is that this literally matches you with the person who is the perfect fit listener for you because they're searching for exactly what you offer. So when you as a host can learn, how do I tell Apple and Spotify, these are the listeners I want through a PSO strategy, then that becomes a really, really powerful way to help you find new listeners. This is why I get so excited about this strategy, because like the numbers are amazing. And, to be able to move up the charts from being invisible and 41% new growth in 30 days. And on top of that, over the 5-month span, to see 155.3% overall growth in that time, averaging about 16% month over month each month as we continue to implement this strategy was just like mind-boggling. Just get excited about this for podcast hosts who are struggling to grow, because imagine what that could do for your show, where you can finally compete against some of these bigger players or longer standing players in your space.
Right. And that's also actually something that I would recommend for new people that are new to the industry or that have just started podcasting, or even people that have been there for quite some time. I think it's important, first of all, to know the keywords that you want to be visible on and to understand, okay, what's actually relevant for me to be visible on. and also to be able to know who's out there. And it's interesting that you're mentioning, for example, other podcasts about podcasting, just knowing who's out there, how maybe are they working already on PSO, or what's like the semantic field that could be related to what they're working on, and how can I maybe implement that for my own show, and how can I also maybe find my niche that other podcasters out there might not be exploiting, but that I could use to my advantage to just make sure that like the audience that I'm searching for will actually find me. That's, I think, something that's really, really powerful and important to do.
Yes. The other thing I want to point out here too is the reason this strategy is so powerful and is so leveraged is because it's not just putting your show at the top of search results, but it's actually making your entire back catalog of episodes visible in search too. Irene, can you break down the difference when someone is searching, let's say inside of Apple Podcasts, between the tabs at the top where you see top results, podcast ranking, and episodes, and why podcasters need to be excited about this because of the potential that this has to get more of their content found?
Yes, absolutely. And that's more specifically something that you can see on Apple Podcasts, but also on Spotify. You can rank and filter the search and the different searching fields that you want to see the results for. So let's say when I'm typing, let's say podcasting on Apple Podcast, the first filter is actually, and the results that I see, the top results. So it could be a mix of shows and episodes appearing in the search results, meaning that you could have your show, but also maybe some of your episodes appearing here, which is already in itself amazing. And then you can filter the search by shows, and then you'll just see different shows appearing and popping in the search results. And you can filter by episodes, and then you can see a list of different episodes. And once again, that's an opportunity for you to try and feature as many of your episodes as possible in this episode field. And I think that's what's incredibly powerful as well, because optimizing both on the show and episode level can help you, especially in the top results, which is the default category, be more visible there.
That's such a powerful thing for people to realize too, because it doesn't just get your show more visible, but having a really dialed in keyword strategy can help your entire back catalog become visible too, whether you have 5 episodes or 50 episodes or 500 episodes. And I will also mention too that search is absolutely now the biggest driver of discoverability for our show, not just in the US though, but also in Canada and also in the UK. And these 3 countries really make up the majority of our listeners around the world. And so now everyone at this point is like, okay, well, how do I make this work for my podcast? And I promise you, in the bonus episode, we're going to break down 5 best practices that you can use for podcast SEO. But before we get there, Irene, I would love to have you leave us with some final words of wisdom on why PSO as a podcast marketing strategy is something that hosts should be taking advantage of sooner than later.
I think now is a really, really good time to start working on PSO, especially because this is a relatively new discipline that has not been yet implemented by everyone. Definitely, we see more and more people getting invested with PSO and like interested in trying to implement some things. But I think now is a very good time to just explore, understand on which keywords you want to focus, understand who's out there, maybe understand how they are or are not yet optimizing their keywords, and just start thinking about all of this, measuring all of this, and implementing the right strategy before everything starts changing, before everyone gets also interested in the discipline. And yes, I think now is a very, very good time to just focus on that before everyone else does.
I like to think of it this way, where if you are building a volume of keywords in all of the written messaging of your podcast, the sooner you start, the more of the market you'll be able to dominate, because you will have a higher keyword volume across your entire catalog of content than someone else who starts tomorrow or next week or next month. And so you will always have an edge on the competition the sooner that you start, because you'll be able to build a higher volume of these core keywords across your entire catalog. It will make it harder for others to compete with you. And I think that's really important for people to realize too.
Yes, absolutely. And especially it's interesting that you're mentioning all of the back catalog, because eventually people are going to have to go back through the list of all past episodes. And the sooner you've been doing this, the more edge you will have on the competition, just as you're saying. So that's crucial.
Yes. And I mean, like I said, it was always hard to get people excited about this strategy because there was no way to really track and see if it's working. And you and the team at Ausha have given us the tools and the technology to make that possible. So none of this, none of the numbers, none of the growth that we've had in these 5 months would have been possible without all the hard work that you and the team have put in. So thank you for paving the way. And thank you so much, Irene, for being here today.
Thank you, Courtney, for having us. It has been amazing working with you. It has been amazing collaborating on PSO together. And yes, I'm excited about what's to come.
As are we. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And if you want to get results like these on your show, but you're like, oh my gosh, I have no idea where to start, then listen closely, all right? Because we have a brand new podcast SEO mastery course where I'm going to walk you through exactly how to apply this strategy to your show step by step in just 39 minutes. We're going to give you the templates that we use here internally for our clients so you can track your podcast SEO results and learn how to build and master a keyword strategy for your podcast that you can execute and start seeing results in as little as 30 days. And because you're a loyal listener of this show, I'm also going to give you a special code to enter at checkout, okay? The code is TOP100, TOP100, no spaces. It's going to give you $50 off when you use it. And if the thought of building a keyword strategy and figuring out the learning curve of how to do podcast SEO well makes you want to crawl under a blanket and hide, well, I've got something for you too. We have also just rolled out a done-for-you podcast SEO service where my team is going to step in and build the strategy for you so you don't even have to think about it. We will hand you the keywords and tell you exactly what to update and when. So all you have to do is plug these keywords in when you write your episode titles or when you write your show notes and see the same results in terms of your visibility. All right. So Top 100 will get you $50 off your first month. And of course, if you are more of a roll up your sleeves and figure it out yourself kind of person, well, Ausha is hands down the platform that I would recommend for you to use to be able to see your podcast SEO at work and to track your results. They are one of our preferred partners for a reason because their analytics dashboard does podcast SEO better than anyone else. And they've just made their podcast SEO tool available to independent podcasters at a very affordable monthly rate, even if you're not hosting your podcast on their platform. So I've linked them up in the show notes for you too. Go check it out if you're more of the DIY type, because right now, 1 in 2 podcast listeners discover new shows through search in Apple and Spotify. We have got to wrap our heads around this as podcast hosts, because this means that if your show isn't showing up in search, you're handing half your audience to someone else. So in the next episode, Irene's joining me back and we're going to fix that. We're going to break down the 5 best podcast SEO practices that will help you get your show ranking where listeners are already looking for content like yours so that every episode you put out becomes a shortcut that helps your ideal listeners find you. And so that your show is the one that they see first when they're searching for what you teach. All that is coming up next to help you make your business binge-worthy.